Hi, this is Carol Ray. I'm the founder and owner of notary2pro.com, and I want to introduce what's a very good business colleague and become a very good friend of mine, Ronnie Mickle. He's the owner of Unlimited Ink Notary, operates out of Phoenix, Arizona, and he's got so much knowledge to share. He's also the owner of Notary Stars, which, if you don't know much about it, you need to look to his website. We'll give you some information before this is over so that you can check it out. We're going to talk about something that Ronnie had a really good idea about, and that is, what is netiquette and how does this come into play for notaries? So, Ronnie, I want to let you take over, and we're just going to go back and forth discussing the situation with the online forum groups and things like this.
All right. Well, I'm so glad to be here with you today. I always look forward to our meetings. So I had suggested this topic because it's something that I find that is not right within the notary community. And when I went to school 10 years ago through college, I went to an online school, which is University of Phoenix. I did most of my collegiate career online, and one of the courses that they had us take was Netiquette. And if you don't understand what the word netiquette means, it is the polite behavior in society, just like etiquette, but on the internet. So they've taken this word and combined it. It's actually a real word, netiquette, and it's basically how you behave socially on the internet. And I've seen quite a few problems between Facebook forums, working with signing agencies, working with each other online. And that's what I wanted us to talk about today, is how this affects the notary community as a whole and each individual business.
Okay, and it really is a big problem. It causes a lot of situations that could be avoided if people would change their attitudes a little bit. So talk about the posting of inflammatory or offensive comments that we see quite often in these different Facebook forums, not so much on LinkedIn, but it's pretty prevalent. So tell us how you feel about this.
So inflammatory or offensive comments, you might consider that to be against one another, but that's actually only one area. In Facebook forums, I see it mostly in two areas. It's where a new notary asks a question, and they're made to feel bad about themselves for asking that question, which is very disheartening to me, because we should all be working together to help each other. We're a very small industry compared to some larger industries where they get a lot more support, and often we're looked over as one of the least important parts of a transaction, when I think we're one of the most important parts. So helping each other is more important than hurting each other. And then I see it also working with signing agencies, where people put out posts of the company, this is a lowball fee, and I wouldn't work for that, and all of these things. And this is not helping our community either. It's never changed anything in a couple of years to make these posts. It wastes up a news feed for important questions, and it makes you look bad when you post these things to other signing agencies that might see it. Of course, these groups are private on Facebook or forums like Notary, Rotary, and things like that, because you have a membership, but it goes out into Google searches, and anybody that you might be working with are going to see that you're just a problem maker. And it doesn't look good for you. It doesn't look good for our community. There's a lot of ways in which I hope we can talk about how we can change the community and get a better response and bring rates up as a community as a whole over the next couple of years, if we can take control of that conversation. But this is where I see the most problems, is peer-to-peer, not being supportive, maybe looking down on people because they need help, and then talking about signing agencies, which does you a disservice. Even though you might be complaining about another company, they see you complaining. I mean, if you are working at, let's just take any business in the world, if you are working, anywhere, and you were complaining all the time about the work that you do, they're not going to want to work with you. So it should be the same within our community. Just because we're online and we have screen names and things like that, which mostly tie back to us these days. It's not like 10 years ago on the internet where you had a fake name. Most of these sites require you to use your name. It does a disservice to you in the long run.
Well, one of the things that a lot of people don't understand is that on these forums, I think one of the oldest forums around is the one that was on Notary Rotary and still is. And they can be pretty vicious on that one. I know I used to be a member of it. And I've had a lot of things said very negative and very untrue about myself. Once I started Notary to Pro, for whatever reason, I guess I wasn't part of the fold anymore, and I just got out of there because it was so negative. It's just a long story, but it was very hurtful. But what they don't realize on all of these forums is, and I've talked to business owners, people who own signing services, title companies, they have their ways of getting in there, and they are very observant, and their memory is very long, and when they hear these things coming out of people's mouths, they won't hire them. People wonder, why are they not hiring me anymore? I used to hear from them a lot, and part of that is they're out there slamming these companies and speaking negatively about them. Who wants to hire them when they hear them coming back with bad things to say?
Exactly. And one of the things that I really want to stress on this point before we move on is that, if you go onto the internet and you slam a company because it pays slow or it has a lowball fee, that's your personal take on it. There's still notaries picking up those orders, and they're going to work with those notaries. But the companies that have higher fees and the companies that pay quickly are not going to want to work with you because you look like a complainer. Staying out of the conversation is much better than doing it. Now, if you're the notary with a problem not being paid, I can understand, but there's an avenue for you to go down, which I hope we can make another video about that, the proper channels to go down to get your payments. Going on these sites and complaining and putting negative and going overboard. I mean, missing a payment, it really sucks, excuse my language, but what sucks more is you having to, not go down the proper channels to get that and still not get paid.
Well, one of the things that I do, I'm going to just interject this because it's something I think it's important. If you are offered a signing by someone, signing service, not usually a title company, but a signing service, let's say, and you can't immediately check the rating of that. And we all know that there's places you can go check the rating and make sure that they're good to work for. And you take that assignment not knowing anything about them. I teach my students that there is something that you can do as soon as you get off the phone with them. Go to these places, check out their rating, and if you find out that they're micromanagers, that they don't pay, they have a terrible reputation, they're maybe like a one-star company. My biggest satisfaction over the years as a signing agent was to call them back and say, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to take that assignment from you because you don't respect notaries. You don't treat them respectfully. I've seen that you have a reputation for not paying people. And it's a terrific thing to kind of get it back, give it back. So, there are things that you can do because I get asked all the time, well, how do I know? How do I know that I can take those jobs? Also, another problem is respecting people's privacies by sharing personal information, sometimes by accident. Sometimes you might show photos or videos that this person doesn't want shared. So give me your thoughts on that.
Well, I have a really great story about a notary that we worked with here in Arizona. And, I was very comfortable sending them out on jobs. But one day I got many calls from our local notaries, and it wasn't like they were telling on them. It was really important for me to see because they thought it was one of our assignments, and luckily it wasn't. They had posted themselves drinking mimosas with their client on Saturday morning, which I don't think there's any law against that, but I wouldn't be comfortable having alcohol with my signers signing a major transaction. But not only that, but when they took a picture of the mimosa glasses, it clearly showed the W-9 with the signer's social security number.
Ugh.
And that was immediate removal from our platform. Now, that wasn't one of our signings, but that prevented her from ever working with our company again. We didn't notify her that this had happened. We just simply severed ties, and that's sad. But respecting people's privacy in other ways. I mean, talking about other notaries, talking about your signers, talking about the experiences you have at your signing. You have to be very careful. You are a professional. You don't see nurses. This is a really great example. You don't see nurses coming home and posting on Facebook forums about people that they had in the hospital because they have privacy things and they would lose their job. Well, one of the things that we sign as a signing agent, it says you're entitled to your privacy, your financial privacy. Talking about the fact they're even having a transaction is getting borderline. A title agency goes through so many hoops and regulations and has closed doors about their consumers, and it's not right for a notary who wants to be a part of that to come back and start talking about those transactions. There are some title agencies, if it were to be found out, you may never work again in this industry. So you have to be very careful. And I know I'm always smiling, but this is a very serious topic. And I thought very hard about it before bringing it up, because I'm seeing it more and more because social media has gotten it so far up that even notaries are using it to communicate with each other. It's made our industry very small. I know notaries around the country that I don't even look up on our platform. I know them from Instagram or Facebook. I actually have reached out and hired a few because I like how they work in these social forums with other notaries. And I think, oh, I know a notary in that state. Maybe I haven't worked with them before or communicated with them before, but if it works to the benefit, it works to the detriment as well.
Well, privacy, consumer privacy is of an ultimate concern in this country now because obviously of identification, theft and all of that kind of thing. I know when we were in Arizona, my husband and I did signings for, they had the baseball training center there. And so we would go to that training center in the spring and oftentimes do signings for some very famous baseball players. And they made it very clear, you don't divulge, you don't tell anybody about who you've signed, and you kept that quiet. And I think we did a couple of football players that were prominent go to the hotel when they were staying there during a game. And that was that you got to be very careful about opening up your mouth and divulging any kind of information, even to your own family, because things can get out and it doesn't look good for you when you do that. About spam, we talked about spam and sending large amounts of spam out, unsolicited email. Tell me about your thoughts on that.
So I see this daily I understand notaries want to work, but once they've established a connection to a signing agency, if the communication goes down for a while, you may want to send a direct email, but you want to be conservative about it. It never fails. We are getting, at the level we are, we get emails from notaries, but they're not just emailing us directly. They're CCing 50 signing agencies and title companies around the US saying, hey, I'm free today. And the way I equate that to is it's almost like stumbling into a very important meeting very loudly that you were not invited to, and everyone looking back at you going, what are you doing here? I almost feel embarrassed for the notaries, and I have to continue this a little bit. And a lot of those who do it don't have a phone number in their signature, don't have their name in their email address. They're just sending these blind emails, and then the other is updating their credentials. They do it at a mass quantity, and that's just not how it's done. If you go through each signing company's avenue, when we get them, we just archive them. We don't even respond because it's so uninvited and so messy that we don't have time to write them back and coach them on that. And so I feel like not, before you click send your email, you should check, I have several email addresses I can write from because of the 2 websites, and, I have assistants' names and things and different signatures added to those. But what you should be checking is, who is this going to? Who can see it on BCC, CCC? Who can see it if they're all going to get it? Those are things that if you don't know about, you need to take a class and make sure you're knowing how to use your internet. You need to know, is this going to hurt me if I send this out to them? Most likely, if you're not doing it properly, it's going to hurt you. You're going to be looked at as unprofessional, disrespectful, and you need to be careful about that. Smaller signing agencies with local business are often okay with that. My local notaries here in Phoenix, they do message me or text message me, hey, Ronnie, I don't have anything for the next 4 hours. If something comes up, call me. I don't mind that. But when I get these mass emails from areas we don't service a lot, we rarely do anything in, New York or New Jersey. And I know I had one this week where it came in and it had like 50 companies, on it. And they were like, hey, I'm available. And it doesn't say where they are, what they service, and I'm not going to go look that up either. So you got to know who you're working with, who you're sending it to, and why, before you actually click send, because you can wind up having people not want to work with you.
Well, I would equate it almost to like being at home in the privacy of your own home, and your phone rings, and it's one of 1,000 calls that's going out and computer generated.
Mm-hmm.
It gives you that feeling you're not important at all. You're just one of the mass. And one of the things that just drives me insane is when I get a letter from somebody, an email from someone, and there's no phone number. You need to have that as part of your signature, always, because a lot of times I would prefer, rather than an email conversation, to really do my job and learn about that person, get to know them a little bit. It needs to be in person. It needs to be on the phone. And if they don't put a phone number, then I'm scrambling, or I can't get it at all. And now we're relegated to nothing but emails back and forth. So for anybody listening, you should add your email to your signature line, and it should always be there, no matter who you send it to.
And I just want to touch on this because I know you teach your students about having a professional email. That's part of Netiquette, having a professional email. A lot of people say, well, I don't want my personal number in my email because I get things. Truly, you should have a separate email for your notary business that identifies you as a notary. Like, for instance, I have a personal email from years ago that I've been using for a long time. It's ronnie.notary@gmail.com. And that's easy for people to remember. They know my name's Ronnie. They know I'm a notary. And at gmail.com. 3 little simple things if they need to remember that off the top of their head. Now, as we've grown into a signing agency, of course, I have our contact inbox. But when I work with a signing agency directly, they use ronnie.notary. When I'm hired as a signing agent, which I'm very fortunate in business, but I still go out and do signings early morning and evenings when I'm not managing my own company. And I have a professional email, and it has all my contact information. It tells people all the things I need them to know, and have a confidentiality clause in it as well, which I think is important. So setting up a signature is huge when it comes to having a social grace on the internet.
Mm-hmm. Very important. How about showing concerns for others online and letting them know that you don't know everything?
So, one of the things that I see, and this pertains mostly to Facebook groups, where it bothers me that people start these groups to help notaries, and then they get a lot of notaries in them, and then they don't want to help. And there's moderators that say, don't ask questions about this, go to the previous post. Well, someone just coming in the door might not know those posts exist. And it's not what you say, it's how you say it. These notary forums that are there should be helping notaries, but it's also the community members of those forums when a notary asks a question, a fellow notary, you should not be looking down on them. You know, I can understand if a signing agency walked in the room full of notaries and everybody said, that person didn't pay us, and a lot of us in the room. But when you walk into a room full of notaries, it should be like church. We should be a congregation, you know, band together. There should be no weakest link among us because we should be helping each other. And I know that's how you run your business, and that's why I tell everyone in the world to get their foundation at Notary to Pro, and that's how I run my signing agency, and that's how I run Notary Stars as a you know, a sort of a church. You know, no one left behind. Well, do some people get on my nerves? Yes, I have no shame in saying that, but I would never make them feel that way. There are some people I think, get it, get it, get it. You almost got it. You know, and I have notaries where I tell them, you know, I'm a tough love kind of guy when it boils down to it. I tell them, you know, I love you and I love everything about you, but this is how it is. And, you know, I think there's a proper way to say something, you know, than to make someone feel bad about themselves. You know, even if someone gets on my nerves, I don't make them feel bad about themselves. I have one notary, and I could call him right now and tell him, and he would laugh and say, "Thank you." I have one notary; it never fails. He calls me right after he gets the assignment, and he's on my top list. He calls me almost every time from the table, and then he calls me before he drops, and then he calls me to make sure we got the packages. And sometimes I've caught myself, you know, I'm taking a shower at 6:30 in the morning and he's calling because he wants to make sure he's doing everything right. I have to appreciate that. I can't, he's one of my top. And there's sometimes I look down at the phone and I'm like, oh my God, can you not just do one order? But then I think this is what I asked them to do. And that's what these notary forms are for. These notary forms want to help notaries, but then the community members within it, if it bothers you, don't participate at all, rather than saying something that's going to hurt someone or discourage them. You know, that's not proper netiquette or etiquette, and you wouldn't do that if you went to church. You know, and I go back to a lot of references. I want to make sure people understand I'm not a super religious guy, but it's one of the oldest institutions on the planet, so it's a great example. When someone goes into church and asks about something faith related, you don't roll your eyes and go, oh, they don't know that story. You teach them that story. And theoretically, I know that there's some places that probably expect you to know it from a young age, but that's how we should be treating each other, because we are a small community. I mean, I think when I last looked it up, there's about 4.5 million notaries. And if you boil down how many are actually signing agents or actually working as signing agents, we're very small community when it comes to things. So we shouldn't be so hard on each other.
Well, some of these forums, they started off on the right foot, with the right intentions, but then they become a place where it's just complaining and camaraderie complaining. And anybody that walks into this fresh and new and doesn't know what they're getting into, all they have to do is ask one simple question, you know, like, where do I put my stamp? Or something so simple, and everybody's off on them. And
I see it like the Disney cartoons. Remember the Disney cartoons with the innocent little characters walking through, and all of a sudden the little yellow eyes pop up in the background? Like, that's how I see it when a new notary asks a question. And I have so much, and I can't say a lot of times because I own a company where we help notaries. I'm not allowed to. I respect those rules inside the forum, so I don't promote what we do inside other people's forums. So I can't say anything. I'll do what I can to help the notary, but I don't drive them to any of our blogs or things like that, because I try very hard to respect everyone's community forum.
That's very.
I quiver sometimes when I see someone ask a question. I'm like, oh, this is going to be bad.
And another thing that people should not do also, unless they're invited to advertise their businesses, don't go in there and start advertising your business and putting posts in there that don't belong.
Hmm.
ask permission from the administrators if this is something you can do. I often have things that I want to post, that something new that's coming up and I want to put it in, but I always ask permission of the administrators if I'm able to do this. Um, like if I'd like, can I mention about my prime time thing that's coming up real quick?
Hmm.
I've got something that is called Primetime Notaries that I'm very excited about. I don't know what you're finding, Ronnie, as far as the age groups of people that are coming into this industry, but I find that the biggest percentage of my students are seniors. They're
Hmm.
50s, they're 60s, and they're looking whole new lives. They're being mistreated, uh, and kind of shoved off to the side by society, at least the working society. So we've got something coming up that we're going to be starting on February the 13th. For anybody who wants to sign up, they can go to notarytopro.com. That's notary, the number two, pro.com. And on the home page, it'll say something about primetime notaries. And this is aimed at those people who are starting new careers at that age, 50s and 60s. And shoot, I'm 77, I'm still going.
I
But you
have to
can
tell you,
sign
I
up.
think this is a great idea, but I want to tell you, it shouldn't be just for people who's starting. I'm sure you won't make it just for that. We have notaries that have been with us a long time that are great, but because of the technological hurdles, um, we have a great notary. I mean, when I said their name at a couple of meetings, people were like, "Oh, wow, that's an asset." They know the notary, but then when we tried to work with them, they were like, "We don't know how to get on signing order. We don't know how to print. We don't know how to do those things," because he's used to picking up the documents at the title agency, doing it that way.
Mhm.
So, I'm excited for you on Primetime Notaries because I think there's two ways to use that. There's people that may have technological hurdles, or problem switching from the old way of doing something into the new ways of doing stuff, and people starting a new career at a retired age.
Yeah, we're not limiting it at all. I mean, anybody can sign up for it, but we feel that this is something that's going to be extremely beneficial for the senior generation.
I'm so
So
happy
I'm
for this.
excited about it. But anyway, so what about trolling people on web forums and comments, constantly nagging or annoying them?
Well, we talked about this earlier, and you shared your experience of this kind of happening to you in the earlier versions of internet forums before even Facebook forum groups became a thing. This happened to you on Notary Rotary and all of the sites you said you got out of, and it's happened to me at the beginning of the launch of Notary Stars, where we had a particular person that said I stole their idea, and which I did not, and um, I feel like going out and blasting people because you don't like them or you don't want to work with them and going after them on the internet, you have to kind of look at it like it doesn't do any service to you to talk bad about other people, especially within your own community. In fact, when that happened to me, our membership level doubled on Notary Stars. So it probably backfired on them more than it did me because people were like, "What's Notary Stars?" Oh, we looked it up, and then I have the trust with them. Um, but it still didn't feel good, and I know it didn't feel good for you either. I always say, if your child was posted something on Facebook and a couple of bullies at school wanted to go after your child, you'd be at the school talking to the principal, talking to the assistant principal, talking to the teacher, making this stop. We're adults. We are adults and we're supposed to be professional. I mean, we often put the word professional in our signature line or our and when we sign the documents, we talk about being professional. It's a professional job. So I think people should be professionals and not go after each other. I've actually seen notaries who it seems like they look for particular people's posts just so they can be mean. And that's infectious. It brings along people. So you gotta be careful about that. Don't Don't go looking for stuff to comment on and be negative. It takes far less energy to be positive than it does to be negative. Far
That's
less
very
energy.
true. Very true. Well, I'll tell you briefly, when I used to be on the Notary Rotary Forum. I always loved helping the newbies. I was a retired escrow manager, had been in escrow for years and years, done signings I did them for 14 years. I loved getting on there and answering questions and helping the newbies out and people, and it was just a passion of mine. And I enjoyed it. And I was on there every day for a certain period of time. Then I started Notary to Pro. And that was when things went south because it was like, how dare she? How could she do this? Then there was really the NNA. It was about it. And I'll never forget this one year, my husband and I were taking our first vacation in 5 years. And we were getting ready to leave. It was first or 2nd of January. And somebody called me up and they said, you should see something that was posted about you. And this was when my company was fairly new, it was maybe 6 months, year old. And somebody said, she posted and said, well, now we know why the title companies are only paying $90 for the signings. And it's because that's what she's teaching her students.
Mhm.
Like, first of all, I had a handful of students the first year. That was it. I think I graduated like 12 people between 2009 and 2010, right? But that hurt me so badly because it led to this whole conversation about how dare she start this training and blah, blah, blah. And I cried for hours. We almost considered just not taking our vacation. And then my husband said, oh, please, let's just you don't need this. Let's get away from here and get away from that. And shortly after that, something else happened and I announced on there. And I was really well known because I was really there for the people, to do whatever I could to help. And I announced to them, I will never come back to this forum ever again because you people are just mean, just
Mhm.
plain mean. And if I could convince my students and convince the title companies to only pay $90, wow, I wouldn't do it at 90. I'd tell them pay us all 200.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was a horrible experience, and it's one that, as successful as I've been, and as much as I love people and as happy of a human being as I am, it was devastating. And if you don't think about what you're doing to other people when you do those things, you need some learning.
Mhm.
Okay, let's see. Oh, talk about sticking to topics. I'm very bad at that. I'm really bad at it because things pop into my head, and if I don't interrupt and say it, it's gone. It's never coming back. I do that on TNT occasionally.
Well, during conversation, it's different, but staying on topic in notary forums and when someone posts, I've seen posts where people are like, where to get a good mobile printer. And sure, ink might be related to that. But then I see people going off, I don't use a mobile printer because, my title agency prints all my documents for me. Well, that has nothing to do with where is the good mobile printer. And it gets far worse. I've seen completely different conversations start. And you know how these forums work is when you comment, then it's just you get a notification every time, and it's not helping anyone to go off on a tangent. And I've seen some far-fetched ones, but to kind of, I know we're getting close to our time. Staying on topic is really, really important when it comes to you know netiquette. It's don't just chime in on conversation. Sometimes I wonder if people just want to talk. So they see a new post, oh, I can comment anything on this. I'm not sure if that's what they're thinking, but stay on topic in the forums, and so that these forums, they're designed to help. They don't always help because people take it off into different directions. Start a new thread or a new post if you have a new idea.
Very good. And we have to watch our language.
Yes, this goes back to the thing that we talked about where I went through earlier this year, I've been called a snake in the grass and a thief and a crook. It's not just curse words that people use, but those are very powerful words that could actually get you sued for, libel because you're putting them into writing. So you have to be very careful what you're writing about other people or other companies. Just because you don't want to work with someone or you don't like what they do or how they do it doesn't give you the right to go put things in writing. In a Facebook forum, you know, they can be screenshotted, they can be kept a record of, other websites. Those things can come back to hurt you in the long run. I go back to the age-old rule when my mom taught me when I was growing up: if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
That's right.
So be very careful about how you're posting in these forums. And it doesn't make you look any better. Even if you jump into a conversation, it's like children. He started it. Well, you got to be careful. Someone else started it, but you got into it. When I was a kid, I used to get into fights when I was in school. This is, part of I always contributed to being from the South. And the principal would have 5 boys in the office, and they'd be like, well, he started it. And the principal would say, well, you all jumped in, so you're all guilty. Doesn't matter, who started it. So again, we're adults and we're professionals. So there's a lot more responsibility that comes along with it. If you're just an adult, great. But if you have an education, or if you've invested in your career, or if you care about your career, be careful with that.
Okay, how do you address people that are asking questions? Do you ignore them because you're afraid you might come up with the wrong answer? Do you know the answer? Do you help them when you know the answer? How do you handle it? How would you suggest people handle it?
So I consider myself, a mentor, because I have to be as a signing agency. I have to help my notaries. When I get into a situation where I have a notary on the phone, I give them how I would deal with it personally. And then I tell them if I've ever phoned the NNA or if I've ever phoned the Secretary of State about that. And I tell them, I always tell people, double check my answer. I don't know everything, and I don't pretend to know everything. And I don't know one person who knows everything. And Miss Carol, you'd be a testament to that. I've reached out to you at least 2 or 3 times for blogs or questions that come up. And I don't just ask you, I also ask Miss Laura and get other opinions about the answer that I'm giving. I see a lot notaries just chiming in and being like, this is the answer, you can only do it this way. And I'm like, no, that's not true. For instance, we have in Arizona, if there's any optional information under the notary signature to fill out, it can get rejected for not filling it out. And that's as simple. We had one this morning where I wrote the notary and I said, could you please add your commission expiration date by hand, because it's asked under the notary stamp. And she said, it's on the notary stamp. And I said, yes, but it's also required to be written in because it's part of your notary block. So I need you to do that and rescan it. She was told, I don't have to do that because it's in the notary stamp, but someone told her that, she's in another state. Someone told her that. And so she thought she could contest that because she didn't want to do more work. We don't have all of the answers. We're all in individual states, and one state recording might be different from another state recording. So being careful and telling someone how to do something, you might be setting them up for failure.
One of the things that I have to emphasize, and I really emphasize, is the fact that we have students from every state. They have to know the rules and regulations of their own state.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's very difficult. Some of the states don't have handbooks. You really have to do the research to find out, if a particular, act can be completed in that particular state. I try to help them by giving them direction as to where to get the answer. Sometimes I see posts and I'm thinking, you're not giving them the right answer. You could be very helpful if you'd help them to find where they can go. You don't have to come up with the answer, but if you can help them to learn where to go to find the answer, would be a lot more helpful.
Hmm.
Well, this has been really good. I hope that a lot of people watch this. You've got so many great thoughts about things, Ronnie. I really respect you, and I really appreciate our collaboration.
I appreciate our collaboration too. And I want to end this with just making sure to remind people to thank others online when they are working with each other. You know, Ellen, one of the biggest stars in the country on television, she ends everything, you know, with be kind to one another. And I think that we should have that in this industry as well. We should be kind to one another. We should help each other. We are a small community. Um, you know, I know some people do this once a month or part-time, and then some people do it as their full-time career. No matter where we are in our journey, we should be kind to one another and open arms with one another and help each other. And that's another video that I'm going to be doing later is, you know, teaming up with another notary. We have the best husband and wife teams. And I know they make more money, but now I'm starting to pair up notaries with colleagues when I can, to match up with someone in their area that they can work with and have a friend or a colleague that they can trust and work with.
Well, one of the things that I've really been emphasizing, especially when I see that there's people that are connected by space, distance, they're not very far apart. They share the same space as far as getting signings. I would love to see more of my students forming small networking groups where they meet, they discuss their problems and issues that affect them in their particular area. Somebody that they can refer to a signing service or a title company if they cannot take a signing, refer to somebody in their network that they trust. There's a full understanding that they're not going to be taking work, they're not going to take the company away from them. But we did this when I was in Phoenix. We had this group that we worked with, and I would rather recommend somebody that I knew I could trust that was going to do a good job, because that reflected back on me, you know,
Hmm.
to provide, you know, somebody in my stead that knew what they were doing. And if I could trust them, it was a whole lot better than having them call somebody out that I didn't know that would be after that business, where I could possibly lose that business. So yeah, I really want to encourage more people to do this. I think that, and I just talked to a woman today who's going to be signing up, and she was saying that she's very isolated. She worked in a very high level industry for many years, and she wants to do this. She knows nothing about it. It's brand new, and she wants to get to a point where she feels that she's in a community where she can have people that she can relate to, talk with, and I'm looking forward to working with her, because that's the situation with a lot of people. You know, they don't have really people in their lives anymore. They're not working in a job where there's people and stuff. So, well, thank you very much, Ronnie. This was good.
Thank
And
you. I love our talks. I love, and you know, I really believe that people are getting a lot out of it. So I think, you know, we do very different things, but I love that we can come together like this and help the notary community. I mean, you and I, we have lots of conversations together, independent of the ones that we record. And I'm loving that people are getting something out of that, because that it's so important for us to give back. You know, I mean, we can't call ourselves leaders or trainers or support if we're not, you know, bringing these things. And I think this is a great topic, so I hope people get a lot out of it. I
I
know
do
that
too.
our previous videos, people have written me, I call it fan mail, and I love it. Um, uh, and I know it sounds greedy to say that, but I love hearing I got something out of that, because, you know, when we brainstorm about these topics and we you know, we put our heart into giving them something. I love getting that mail where it says, I watched your video and I didn't think about that before. It means that we're opening the minds of our community. And with
Mhm.
this one, I hope that the notary community will get a lot out of it.
I get emails and phone calls. When are you going to do the next video with Ronnie? And I think that both of us are very down to earth, and people relate to us. I hope they feel that way. So yeah, and I think you're giving them a lot of information from a different perspective. You know, you're the owner of a company who hires notaries. So what you have to say to them is very important. I hope they're listening.
Yep.
So have a great rest of your weekend. And
You too.
we'll talk soon.
Have a great one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.